Oh, there you go. Hi, good morning.
Hi, Givenchy. Good to meet you.
You too. So I just want to go ahead and get started. Maigret, a
Maigret.
novel adaptation that has been done 4 different times, but here you
Many,
have
many more. More
many
than 30.
30 times.
Yep.
Well, thank you. In my research, I definitely saw like 3 British shows, a French show
Yeah.
that went on
Three
for a
British,
really long
three,
time.
three big British shows. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But with yours, it feels more like a contemporary reimagining than anything, especially with aging down the primary character and kind of mixing up the group, Les Maigret, as well. So my question for you is why take this route now? Like what was the motivation behind it?
Partly, well, to a big degree, those three British series you mentioned. I think the first one, BBC in 1960s. I haven't seen it, but I looked at clips. I think that was contemporary, funnily enough, but it was in black and white. Simonon was still writing Maigret while that show was shooting, and it was apparently that actor was his favorite Maigret. Um, anyway, I mean, a lot of films have been made from Maigret books, but there'd been not been that many TV series. I'd watched the next two British ones. There was one in the 90s with Michael Gambon. And
Hmm.
there was one in the 2015, 2014 with Rowan Atkinson. So, pretty well-known British actors. And as much as I love them, I thought they didn't capture everything that Simonon had in his books, because Simonon was a crime writer.
Yes.
He was a journalist, he knew the cops, he knew criminals, he had murderers among his friends and so on. He's just an all-round fascinating, difficult, complex guy. And I knew he was not writing period pieces. He was writing about the Paris he was living in right then. And I thought I can be more true to him and his fast, racy books, dark, violent, funny books, if I am in contemporary Paris. And if
Hmm.
I'm gonna, as you said, age down our leads, that means I have to be making an honest film, I have to have a diverse cast. Les Maigret are no longer four white men in suits, which they are every other version. There's going to be a North African kid, there's going to be someone from
Hmm.
the Caribbean. It's just going to be different. And of course, I knew a lot of these young actors. Shaniqua, I tried to cast on a series I'd done before, The Tower. She was beaten out by another brilliant actor, but I'd written to her at the time saying, the next thing I do, I will write a role for you. And when I saw Janvier, I immediately started writing it for Shaniqua because I knew the power she has and she's so funny and fast. So that just,
So
and I
good.
knew by casting those people is going to look completely different, but it's completely the same. That's what I like. I'm being true to the books and to the character of Maigret. It's just had this injection of, I don't know, pace and vitality, and I hope humor. I don't know. I hope you find it funny now and then.
So, speaking of the humor, one of my favorite characters in the show is actually like not even some of the main cast. It's the forensic analyst and how he delivers everything in such a just monotone way, but it made me laugh every time. So, was that something when you were writing this character that was on purpose, whereas like you just described for Jean where she does bring a little bit of humor to that as well?
Um, it's a tiny bit of a trope to have a pathologist that always pulls the leg of the lead detective. So I was a little bit wary, but once we cast James, he is genuinely so funny that once we had him, I rewrote all his scenes because I knew he could deliver, and I added quite a lot because I knew those. I just know that actor's really funny.
Mhm.
And you believe him as a pathologist, I mean, a forensic scientist. There's no question there. But it just gave me an opportunity to lighten stories are dark, but that gives you an opportunity to smile, basically. So that I enjoyed a lot, and it's credit to the actor. He nailed it.
He did. It was incredible just to see how he played off of Maigret just every time they were in the office and he's like giving him the answers without giving him the answers and making him just go do his own detective work. And I thought that played really well. But going back to Les Maigret at Le Creme, you talked about how this particular version you wanted it to be more true instead of just a period piece, and even changing them from 4 white men to just a diverse cast. I found that you did a really incredible job at not making them just diverse, but having inclusive voices across solving all of the cases. So that's not something that a lot of people do. We talk about diversity, but we never really include the voices, include their strengths. And every character's strength was highlighted across all 6 episodes. So can you just talk about like the process in writing and then what that looked like as the characters were coming to life?
Um, it matters a lot to me. But I tell you what matters more to me is having real characters and giving actors, whoever they are, whatever they are, challenging roles. So I got one time I got a bit of pressure about making someone's boss a woman of color, and I said no because she won't have anything to do. She'll be there at a desk saying blah blah blah. It's not interesting. So if I have to find interesting roles, complicated roles, so that the actor, whoever he or she is, will have something that will challenge them, scare them, interest them, and so on. So once I'm thinking like that, then I think you don't notice the diversity almost, which is it's just life going on. It's like these are real
Mhm.
people moving in and out of this story with their own rich emotional backstories and lives. And because we were lucky we just cast some wonderful actors, that's kind of the impression I get when I watch the whole 6 hours. It's there, but you're not pointing fingers at it. You have to look at it. And that's
Yeah.
really important because the story for me always comes first. Story. Got to tell a good story.
No, and I absolutely love that. Like the fact that what they looked like and where they came from wasn't the focal point. It was just a bunch of people who wanted to work together and solve crime. And you really did that very well. I'm really excited for everybody to see the adaptation. But speaking of stories, you're a writer, you're clearly passionate about what you do. Now, I don't know if this was done on purpose, but every episode between the A and B story, it felt like a dance where the audience doesn't really know if they overlap. Does one impact the other, but then they separate, but then maybe they come back? So, how do you balance that without one dominating the other? Because I was in tune with every single thing that was happening, but it was just like the guessing game, right? So, how do you do that?
I honestly, I think that's just having done it quite a lot. The dance has become natural for me. That doesn't mean that I will write a draft of the script and I will get a note from a director or an executive at Playground saying, we think your B story is like we haven't felt the B story for a while. And I will probably say to them, that's because I don't have anything to tell you about it. So it's going to stay out. That goes to what I said before, the story comes first. So don't just have a
Mhm.
scene to keep a story alive because the actors won't have anything interesting to do. So the scene will be dead and it will end up on the cutting room floor despite us spending a day shooting it. So it's if I once I've got the right two stories, and there will be books where I'm just telling one story, then they have a kind of hidden thematic connection. They sort of work off each other. I mean, the missing influencer and the guy, the big fat billionaire, the retail billionaire, the wonderful Danny Carane. There's a subtle balance there, but the B story speaks more to what's going on in the Maigret's personal life. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I had to be, that was quite hard, that one, getting connections. That really was. And I changed things in editing there, where we sort of
Mhm.
altered it. Because that is the hardest thing. If you're telling two stories to the audience, be really into B story, and suddenly you got a big chunk of the A story and you're thrown off. So that is A, practice in having done it a lot, but still being able to make mistakes, and then B, being able to fix those mistakes more or less in editing. It's one of the hardest things. But if you've only got two stories, it shouldn't be too hard. I mean, imagine trying to do writing ER was really hard. Writing
Yeah.
because you had five, six major characters. Grey's Anatomy, they're really hard. This is slightly easier.
And I felt the ease of that. Like I said, it was just very good to watch it all play out, especially when you look at the relationship between Jules and Louise. Um, for two people to have such a background that they have with Jules, coming from a place of trauma and, her being a psychiatric nurse and them just trying to figure out how to progress their lives as a family, there's not a lot of conflict there. So it makes watching them easy to integrate in the drama of the rest of the story because they appear to be absent of drama in the face of the crime that's happening. And you don't really see that a lot in television. Like there's always like some conflict at home as well. But she's just such a caring character that she essentially like gives Jules his feet to continue to solve a crime. And I think that's done very beautifully.
That's right. I mean, it was, I think when I was, again, the first thought, you're thinking, what is the stress in the marriage? Is there stress? Shall I write it? Shall I underwrite it? And then actually going from Simenon, the author of the books, was no, even though he was writing a very bourgeois marriage where Madame Maigret was at home all day and had dinner was on the table, and if he was late, then it was back in the oven and it was there. And she never complained, ever, in 75 books, maybe twice. So I thought, I'm going to keep that element of a loving relationship um, and put it in contemporary Paris. But the difference is that make it really clear that the place Maigret wants to be is home with her. That is his safe place. They talk about everything. They are still passionately in love. They're trying to have a child, but they're also deeply good friends. They've come through a lot together. And to write that, and then have two really good actors. And when I was directing, it was very much the camera I put the camera back through in the doorways, so you could just see a couple who know each other moving around the space they share.
Mhm.
And that was, it worked really, I think, quite well. So that was, I know that it's different. And I know I think those scenes are lovely. I think people will really enjoy them.
No, they're great. And you mentioned directing. I believe you directed the first two episodes,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So talk to me about like that impact of choosing which episodes are going to go first and the message that you want to give to draw the audiences in because the first two episodes are very much continuous of one another and you really pull us into the empathetic Maigret in regard to the criminal and just two completely different crimes going as well. So what goes into choosing that and this being like this is the right choice to grab the audience?
I often thought I'd made the wrong choice, but in the end, I think it was the right choice. There was a line in the book, The Lazy Burglar, Maigret and the Lazy Burglar, where the prosecutor, Carnival, at the riverbank, says, speaking of the dead man there, the burglar who's been beaten to death and dumped by the river, she says to Maigret, "It's a tragedy, of course, but there are so many." And that line's in the French, and I thought, wow. This book was written, I think, in the 1930s. And I thought that's a
Mhm.
really cold line, cold, hard line, and quite a real political line too. And that's the essence of the script, of the story, is that Maigret rejects that absolutely. He says, "This is the case I should follow. There's a dead black man here, and I'm being told to leave it alone and look after some banks that have been robbed. I am not going to do that. I'm risking my job for it." So that's the basic conflict. And it's not like he's carrying a political flag or anything or protesting to his superiors. He's just going to quietly, doggedly ignore her orders and investigate both cases. And so that when I read those lines, I thought that's a really good way to start a contemporary Maigret.
No, I think it worked very well. And like you said, he's not waving a flag. He's just simply living as an ally, not to one individual group, but just to people and to the voices, and really getting inside the head of the criminals and humanizing them in a way to actually find out who did what and the motivations behind it. And I think just with the text that you have to pull from, and then making him, I believe he's in his 30s now. It's a type of empathy in a man in that age that you don't see right now in television. I watch a lot of television, but you don't really see the way that they internalize that. And I thought that you did a really good job out the gate with that case, with internalizing how he felt about this criminal who he hadn't seen for quite a few years, as he says. So it was wonderful. Um,
Good.
but this isn't your first crime. I think I saw somewhere Law and Order SVU Inception in 1999. So, what is it about crime dramas that just keeps you coming back?
Um, Crime allows me to talk about society, about character, about people. All the range of things. You have a vehicle, which is the crime story, whether it's police or spies or lawyers, and you can tell any story because the newspapers, television news, whatever, and I read everything constantly. You're always throwing up cases which show how terrible and how wonderful we are as a human race. So it's why, frankly, not always, but I'm always tempted by it.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me. This show is absolutely amazing. I cannot wait for fans of the books, fans of the older series, and new fans like me to see it and receive it. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you. It's lovely to
Thank
talk to you.
you.
Thank
You
you.
too.